So good morning, everyone. My name is Marcus Ryder. I'm the chair of the Film and TV Charity. I just want to say a little bit about the charity. The charity supports the physical, financial and mental health of people working in the film, TV and cinema sector behind the camera. People working in the industry are disproportionately affected by mental health issues. According to the charity's own research, phones just go off whenever they want to. No, according to the charity's own research, only 11% of people working in the sector describe the industry as mentally healthy. 29% of respondents to a survey that we did recently considered taking their own life during the previous year leading up to that survey. That's almost a third. 2% of people working in the sector attempted to take their own lives, and 11% self-harmed. Mental health is a serious issue behind the camera. It's a serious issue in front of the camera. To discuss some of those issues are Andy Brereton, Senior Comedy Commissioner Editor at Channel 4.
Hello.
Hello. And we have Kate Martin, Head of Lived Experience at the Wellcome Trust. And
Hello.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll have Don Matthews, Studio Head of Ninja Theory, but his train is running late. So my first question, which is going to be for all of you, but just two of you, is a nice general question. Is how important do you think the role entertainment plays in both the ways we think about mental health as a society and how individuals experience mental health issues?
This is my worst nightmare that one of the panellists didn't turn up, but here we go. I hope you like comedy
That's
and not
your
games.
worst. That's the worst nightmare.
Oh, it's a stress dream I've definitely had.
Maybe we could just make up answers for him.
We were talking about this earlier, and I think in comedy, which is a tricky genre anyway, because obviously the main aim of it is to be funny. I think what's fascinating and interesting and brilliant at being at Channel 4 in particular in the comedy department is there are areas now you can talk about because we have the writers who can treat them, make them funny and be delicate with them. And I think that's actually really exciting because I think it opens up, certainly feedback we get on a lot of our shows, is really positive to say. It's really nice to see the portrayal of this in a genre you wouldn't normally expect. So I think for us it's definitely it's really good that the viewers are so sophisticated now that you feel like, I don't feel like even 5 years ago or more you could deal with these topics in comedy, but now with the right writers I think you can, which is really exciting.
And so do you think it's, sorry, I know it's for both of you, but I just want to just interrogate that just a tiny bit more.
Interrogate?
Yeah.
Oh, interrogate away, I'm fine.
So do you think that do you think society has changed? I know it's the art imitating life, life imitating art, but do you think that comedy has enabled conversations that weren't there before, or do you think that there are conversations happening now which has enabled comedy to address subjects that before they couldn't?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can only talk from my genre, and I definitely think, in particular at Channel 4, I mean, I will say, I'm not just because I work there, Channel 4 is quite an inclusive, open place. It's a place where you can there's teams to talk to about lots of different things. And I think in comedy, what's great is we feel like we can talk about these, what would have been quite complicated things. And then equally on top of that, like I said, it always comes from the writers. There is now brilliant writers that have grown up in different environments, which is beautiful that they can then say, I want to talk about this because it's important to me. So I think it's just that gradual change, and it just so happens at this moment, which I think hopefully will go further and further and further, is you can stop talking about it, which is brilliant.
So, Kate, same question to you. What role do you think entertainment plays in both the ways we think about mental health as a society and how individuals, I'm really curious about how individuals actually experience their own mental health issues?
Sure, I think it's got a massive role to play in showing the reality of people's lives, reflecting their lives back to them, that taking away that shame and stigma. So often issues like mental health, many of the issues that surround that people live with are kind of not talked about. They're kept quiet, they're kept hidden, they feel shameful, they feel embarrassing for people to talk about. But to see that reflected on TV in a normalised, positive, everyday light really takes that away from people. It helps them associate with it, whether it's through comedy, whether it's just through showing the reality of it. Like, you know, I remember growing up as an LGBT young person and seeing the first time I remember seeing something, a gay person on TV, that is still by far the most favourite thing. It's still the best memory I've got, right, of seeing myself on telly in a way that I didn't see myself anywhere else in the world. And I think it's the same for all issues, mental health in particular. If you see yourself represented in the mainstream media frequently in a positive light, it means an enormous amount to individuals. I think it also really encourages people, I think, to feel that mental health is way more common, mental health challenges are way more common than many people experience, I think.
I think a couple of years ago there was a hashtag that went viral. It was predominantly amongst African Americans, but I think other people picked it up, which was First Time I Saw Myself. Do you know about that hashtag? Yeah. And that was, so many people cited The Cosby Show or cited Sesame Street or whatever. Yeah, maybe we should get that going for mental health as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Andy, Channel 4 is responsible. We're talking about TV programs. We're talking about comedy. Channel 4 is responsible for Big Mood. I think we have a clip. Can you tell us a little bit about Big Mood and Channel 4's approach to representing mental illness?
Yeah, this is a show that's currently out. You can watch it on 4 streaming. Are you allowed to do plugs at this?
I plug the charity.
It helps our department immensely.
You can donate to the charity. But, okay.
So Big Mood is, it's a very unique female buddy comedy at its purest sense, which is something I can talk about after you've seen the clip about how we sort of treat comedies at Channel 4 and how we can tackle things you wouldn't expect in comedy. So here is a clip from it. It stars Nicola Coughlan from Derry Girls. She plays Maggie, and her best friend, played by Lydia West, is Eddie. And in this clip, it's a very short clip, it's, I'll just read this little blurb before so I don't get it wrong. It's actually commissioned by Laura Rizium on our team, who does an amazing job. And in this clip, Maggie is in the throes of a depressive bipolar episode, but her best mate, Eddie, wanted to throw her a 30th birthday, and it had to be a themed Love Actually party. So combining all of that led to this short clip in this comedy.
Maggie, do you remember when you had norovirus when we went to Festival and I got you those adult nappies so you didn't have to miss Elton John? If you could do that, you can do this.
Eddie, I know we have wanted to throw a Love Actually party for years, but this could not be worse timing.
Just because you're in a funk.
It's not a funk, it's a mood disorder.
Sorry, I know. But if you stay at home alone on your birthday, you're going to regret it. I know you will. I promise, we're going to have fun.
I will do 1 hour, that is it.
Yes, my darling.
So if you are Laura Lynn, does that make me her brother who has a mental illness?
It's what we always said we'd do. Clint, go!
Oh, Jesus, no. What are you doing? Let me choke me. Eddie, you're trying to choke me.
Have so much fun.
So
Okay,
itchy.
right, we're there.
Eddie.
See, you look so good.
Happy birthday, Maggie. Ah, everything okay?
Oh, yeah. Peachy.
It's written by Camilla Whitehall, and I think what we try to do at Channel 4 sometimes is, when you speak to the writers about the shows they write, whether it's Jack Rook on Big Boys or Camilla, what's great and the right way around for us in the comedy department is they're like, I just want to write a comedy. And then what we kind of tend to do at Channel 4 when we want to when we want to bake in some brilliance that other channels can't do is we go, well, Camilla's written a comedy it's not autobiographical, but there's lived experience there. And her aim is just to write a comedy. And then within that, there are layers. And I think that's not just when we do comedies about mental health. It can be the same as We Are Lady Parts. It can be the same as The In-Between, as Would You Believe. It's when there's actual sort of a reality that's under there. One, they're a lot funnier. But two, what's brilliant, I think, it's the kind of Trojan horse effect, is you're in for a comedy and you're laughing, and then the kind of power hits you, probably stronger sometimes than maybe if you'd watched a documentary about it or you're in a different frame of mind. And so that's what I think is brilliant about Big Mood, Big Boys. A lot of the things we do is when we get you in to watch a comedy. It is a comedy and it's really funny. And then we sort of put another layer in just to, you know, something you weren't expecting. And so you go away thinking, I probably wouldn't know about that except if I'd watched this comedy. So I think Big Mood is a brilliant example of that.
Kate, so obviously I spoke to all of you before, Dom as well, who's not here.
Sorry, what did you say to put him off, by the way? Was it?
This is a big prank show, I think.
And without you knowing what Andy was going to talk about, you actually you referenced Big Mood. And so I'd be curious as to what you like about Big Mood, without complimenting Channel 4 and Andy too much.
Laura who produced it.
Yeah. What does it get right?
I think, following on what you were saying, I think what I love about comedies like Big Mood and others is that it shows the messy, funny reality of living with mental health challenges, right? Most of the stuff we see on TV or in any kind of like media about mental health, it's like the pity story, it's tragedy, it's the head tilt, these poor people and they're suffering. And actually that isn't. I've lived with mental health challenges for years. I grew up as a young carer of a family with severe mental health problems. And it isn't like that. The reality is it can be darkly funny, it can be difficult for sure. But like when you see programs like Big Mood, you just really associate with it because that is the reality of living with mental health challenges. It's messy, it's funny, it's difficult. Of course it's hard, but like that's the reality of it. That you really associate with that rather than these kind of like, and this is not to criticise documentaries, but documentaries are often going in to kind of uncover really difficult issues, really important part of that. But they don't necessarily represent the majority of people's lives. Or what you often see in dramas is people at a very severe crisis point. Which of course people do experience, but again, that's not the common everyday reality that people live with. So comedies really bring out, like you say, I think people who have lived experience who write comedies or involved in writing them, I think are a bit more confident at showing that reality because they've lived it and they can make it funny because they can show it in a way that is still compassionate and nuanced. But again, yeah, it just shows the funny, messy reality of people's lives. And
you're head of lived experience at Welcome, and you've both talked about lived experience in your last two answers. How do you recommend people to either consult or work with people with lived experience of mental health issues?
Sure. So in the work that we do, I think first thing, one of the ways that we try and frame lived experience in the first place, right? So lived experience we see as more than people's personal experiences. We see it as a form of like knowledge and expertise, wisdom, insight that, comes from having lived with mental health challenges, but it's more than your personal experience of it. You've got knowledge of other people's experiences, of the complexities of the system, the common challenges people experience, the funny, dark, ridiculous situations we all get ourselves into, right? So it isn't just about someone come along and bearing their soul and telling their tragic backstory, which is often how lived experience is positioned. You know, often you see people with lived experience brought to events or brought to guide on projects, and it's like, you come and tell us your sad story, we'll listen to it and we'll decide what to do with it. And that's actually really disempowering, I think, for people. So certainly the way that we frame it, and many others in the lived experience community try and frame it as a form of knowledge, insight, expertise. So if you've got expert advisors on programs, bring in lived experience experts who are not just talking from their personal experience, but are offering that deeper knowledge, insight. They can be writers, they can be producers, they can be whatever you need, but can really help shape that content. So I think the main thing is seeing people in, not just as people we can consult with, but people who can have formal, decent, sort of powerful roles on projects that will really drive it forward, I think.
And they should be paid?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah. And again, that is so often true. People are brought on, and the number of conversations I've had where people say, well, we don't want to pay people because it'll take away from the meaning of what they do. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll stop paying all of you then. If payment is just about, like, we don't all get paid. We presumably, most of us in this room do what we do because we care about it and we're passionate about it. The money helps us live. It doesn't take away from the passion. And it's exactly the same for people with lived experience. But yeah, so often we get the little head tilt and be like, well, I just want to give you an opportunity. And you're like, thanks, but no. So yes, payment is a must.
And I find it really interesting you making that distinction with regards to sometimes I think that lived experience is so often confused with victim experience, as if it's, you know, it was framed within victimhood. I don't know how you find that, Andy, whether sometimes people think of it in terms of victimhood and how comedy reframes that.
Yeah, I think probably exactly what's been talked about there is we come into any project on, is this funny and entertaining? And I think that probably lends itself more towards not doing a story that where it's talking about the victim and it's being quite negative about it. Naturally, comedy, hopefully, people have very different senses of humour, but the idea is you're supposed to laugh at it. And so I think we often, I just think our genre in particular, it's a brilliant one to be in because your sort of starting point isn't from a negative standpoint. It's always from a kind of make someone laugh. And obviously there's different spectrums of that, but that's why I think in particular like Big Mood and stuff, whenever you speak to anyone who was involved in it, the first thing they'll ever say is, not that I'm making a show about this, it's like, I'm making a comedy. And I think that's really good.
With lived experience, are there problems of people worrying that they'll get pigeonholed, though, that they'll be thought of, they're the comedy person for mental health, or they're the comedy person for... and so I'd be curious how you approach that, and I'd also be curious as to, in your experience, when you talk about lived experience, that people don't just get pigeonholed for that one lived experience.
Again, I think at Channel 4, it's sort of in the DNA that how you approach stuff, you need to be very thoughtful and very open, and I think that's a brilliant starting point. So when people come and talk to us about projects at Channel 4, I think there's a feeling that you're coming to a place that's not here to ridicule, or, you know, you have to be very delicate with like some of those kind of questions. So I think that, what was the question?
Just making sure you're not pigeonholed.
Pigeonholed, yes. So I think like that's what, we do have some, you know, writers, performers who I think naturally have, that's happened to them, and we're very careful that they can come to us and say, do you know what, I'm actually feeling that I've become a spokesman in an area I didn't want to be, not because, just because it's hard to suddenly be like, why don't you speak about this? And so I think we're always very careful about when it's getting too much or somebody feels like that we're here to say like, okay, you don't have to do that, and we'll be very careful. So for example, today, you know, I'll speak to Laura and Laura will speak to Camilla, and I'll say like, you know, what would Camilla be comfortable with me saying? And I think that's just being, well, I think it's just being nice, which is important. And then it just means that you're then making sure that they feel that you're not slowly pushing them towards being this kind of in the spotlight. You're the person who needs to talk about this. Because, as I said, and I keep saying it, they got into this to write sitcoms. They didn't get in it to do huge speeches in front of audience and be a spokesperson if they don't want to. And
what about yourself, Kate, with regards to pigeonholing? How do you guard against that, or how should we think of that?
Sure. I mean, I'd echo what you say, really. Like, if we, I suppose, traditionally, like I said before, like, people are brought out, it's like, come along, tell your story, and then it's kind of like, off you go again. And that's the kind of only influence people were sort of given, really, or the only opportunities that people were given. If you see lived experience as a form of expertise, which kind of demands proper roles, like everyone else in this room has, then you're not just coming as the person with that experience, you're coming with knowledge and insight. You're also bringing a whole host of other skills. So you're not just, like the team that we recruit here, we have 17 lived experience consultants. They're based in multiple countries to advise and inform our work. And when we recruited them, we were really conscious that, like, the entry level, the baseline is that you have lived experience, right? But that wasn't the end point. That wasn't what we kind of interviewed or recruited them on. We then were interviewed and recruited on the skills needed for the role, which sounds really bizarre because that's how we recruit anybody, but all that still seems to go out the window when we're talking about lived experience. So we wanted to know, do they have interest in our global research programme? Do they have an interest in driving forward research on new interventions? They've got strategic thinking skills. So we treated it like any other role. And when you treat it like any other role, you become seen as a member of a team, not the person with that experience who's there to advocate for that. And I think that brings with it, going back to your other question about vulnerability, like, so often mental health is seen as people being vulnerable, in need, like, you know, that need help from others, that are incapable, etc. And I think when we start to reframe it, actually realise people have, it kind of opens up the opportunity to bring all their other knowledge, skills to the fore, and to see things in a more kind of empowering light, that people have got much more to contribute. And I think finally, bringing people in to kind of write comedy or drama, whatever it is, allows them to reframe their own experiences in a more positive light as well, and to kind of own those in a different way. And certainly I've seen, through my own experiences doing comedy and others, really being able to kind of use your experiences in a more positive light. Isn't people head tilting and feeling sorry for you? That people are kind of laughing along with you is second to none.
Okay. Andy, once again, I was reading my favourite columnist in the Daily Mail, and and I'm now told that we can't make jokes about anything.
No, that's true.
And so I'm curious.
Sorry,
as to
no
what-
laughing.
Is that the
please?
answer?
There's no-
Yeah, no, that's true.
We can't joke about
make jokes.
anything
can't joke
anymore?
about
We just-
anything.
No.
Okay. That was a flat joke. But are there any red lines? Are there any things that are off limits for your comedy with regards to mental health? And I see you're champing at the bit to answer that one, but it goes to Andy first.
We always take a kind of, I think, a gut instinct to how we feel something would come over. So I think in terms of comedy, it's a genre that you naturally prod and poke sometimes to get a laugh, and I don't think that has changed, and I don't think it should change. For example, I can't give specific details, but sometimes what happens certainly in programming and in comedy is real events can take over. So, we might have been doing a comedy which we think's fine, and then something happens in real life, and we suddenly go, that now doesn't feel funny anymore. And I mean, for all the people that put hard work into those things, it's obviously annoying. But I think that's what we do at Channel 4. We've got, I think, a pretty good barometer. We have lots of people that work outside of us in comedy that we can go and talk to and say, will you look at this and just make sure that everything sort of feels authentic and we're not doing anything that would, I don't want to use the word offend, because sometimes we wanted to make comedies that offend, so maybe that columnist from the Daily Mail. But I think that, what we tend to do is take a kind of a gut feeling, and if certain events or something just feels it doesn't feel funny, I think we've got a pretty solid team that can sort of spot that and say we probably won't go there.
Okay, you look like you wanted to answer that question about red lines.
I just think I don't think there are any sort of clear red lines, I suppose. It's about who's writing it and what's the intention. I think that's what people pick up on. Like, is it punching down? Is it mocking people? Or is are people making light of their own experiences? And I think most of us can tell the difference between those two things. So I think who's writing it, where it's coming from, what the intention is. Will everyone like it? Maybe not. But is it someone kind of making light of their own experiences, or people like them, or are they being mocked and put down? Is it punching down, or is it not? I think is a huge thing. I was going to say something else, but I've forgotten. You'll just have to believe that it was really interesting and insightful.
Okay, I know he's not here. I do want to say one thing. I'm also a massive gamer, and Dom, because I got to meet Dom, so I was just quite excited as a fanboy. It was really great. And if you haven't played it, they produced a game called Hellblade, and there's a new one coming out. And honestly, when we talk about Trojan horsing and hiding things in that game, as you play it as a character, it's a really good game. But on top of it, you wear your headphones and there's a kind of voice in your head that's sort of telling you you're not as good as you think you should be as you're going through this journey. And honestly, I played that and came away knowing more about what that must be like. Not exactly, but so I know he can't entertain stuff, but if you do get a chance and you do like games, Hellblade is brilliant, and that way that they melded it is absolutely superb.
So, to quote, the game's narrative serves as a metaphor for the character's struggles with psychosis. So, I'm not a gamer, but having spoken to... I know, sorry. But having spoken to... And I don't read the Daily Mail, but anyway. But having spoken to Dom and speaking to gamers, Hellblade does seem an amazing immersive experience to create better understanding of mental health. So it's a shame that the railways let us down. Now, I've only got 6 minutes, and I was told that I should be taking questions from the audience. Are there any questions from the audience? If there aren't, I've got at least another 5 questions to go. Yep.
I'd be interested to know if you feel there's a role or a place to put people who have mental health challenges into stories that are not predominantly about mental health. So I don't know what the technical term is, normalization or something, but is there, just because what's the future for mental health and entertainment? Do you think that's a worthy thing? It should be done, to be encouraged?
Again, I can speak for our department at Channel 4, is actually, we, as a company, I think we're always trying to get, and we're sort of in a really good place, I think, is that we don't sort of, when anyone comes in to write or talk or do something, we don't naturally then go, oh, you should do that because of that, but you can't do that. And actually, just in terms of mental health or disability or anything, what we tend to do now at Channel 4, certainly in comedy, is like, that's not anything we factor. If you want to come in and write about a fish and chip shop, that's fine, it doesn't matter, as long as it's a funny sitcom about a fish and chip shop or not. And so we're very, I think as a company and definitely as a department of our comedy, yeah, we are, it is lovely as it's not a question, we don't question it, which I think is really positive from working there.
Okay. Question at the back, man with his hand up. Just going to have to shout, I think.
I love that you said man with the hand up, not the bald man, because last time I raised my hand and someone said, oh, the bald man in the back.
Listen, we have to stick together, so it's all good.
Yeah. I have a question about comedy, and you said something about doing sensitivity watch and authenticity reads and making sure that it's not offensive. And I just want to give a story as an example of what my question is. Sorry, it's a bit too, it's not going to be long.
It's not about you coming in to pitch to me, because
No,
I'll apologize.
I'm not pitching, I promise. So Ricky Gervais's last special, he made a joke about migrants crossing the channel, and then he said something about showing them where Gary Lineker lives. When it was out, it was trending on Twitter, and everyone found it so offensive. So I crossed the channel, and I watched that show with a bunch of people who watched the channel, who crossed the channel, and we loved that joke. Everyone laughed so hard, everyone found it funny, but people on Twitter didn't. So my question is, what do you consider offensive? If someone's pitched something to you, or someone sent you a script, and who is deciding what's offensive and what's not in comedy?
Well, I suppose a little bit about the process of when we do scripted comedy as well is that it's not, once we get a script, there's a legal department, and there's lots of departments to look at, not just to do with what's offensive, but to do with things like, if we put this out, I had a show I was looking after where there was a particular joke, and we had to have a big chat about it internally, because we're like, if we do this joke, there is a likelihood that someone could sue us. So then you just, which is lovely, and it's always been like this, you sort of sit with very well-educated people, and me, who just wants to make a joke, and you talk about risk. And that's what you do in the end. But it really comes down to that group of individuals and the channel to say, are we willing to go there? Do we think, would we get into trouble for that? Would we not? Is that offensive? Is it not? And it kind of, that's how the process works. But sometimes it works for lots of reasons, not just, because everyone's got different sense of humour, so it's very difficult to predict what people find offensive and not. But I think we have procedures there to do things like, what are the risks of telling that joke? And it's a brilliant bit of my job I do love sometimes, not all the time, but it is funny to sit in a room, and you're going to make, for example, a paedophile joke, and then you have a very lengthy discussion about what is a joke, which deep down I find really funny that that's happening, but it's actually a really good process to go like, is that joke funny enough? Is it clever enough? Are we protected by it? And that's kind of what tends to happen in a lot, not just Channel 4, but when you get to that level, if there's a concern, it gets discussed.
I think we've got time just for one more question. Lady with the glasses, because she's close to the mic. Oh, you can't.
Hiya. My question is, because you've talked a lot about representation and lived experience, but I'm wondering if you work across or have any thoughts on how we make sure that our creators, writers, people behind the camera, kind of what Marcus was talking about in terms of how can we work on actually helping and being there for people with mental health issues, and if this is something that is incorporated in the work that you do, or any advice for the room?
Yeah, I mean, again, at Channel 4, I suppose another way of talking about the process is when we do shows, and again, I'm just talking about comedy shows, you have a start-up meeting with the production company, because obviously as the channel, you're not making the show, but production companies, and I've done both. I've run production companies as well. And so what you need to do is make sure you've got all the right things in place. And I've seen some companies that are brilliant at that and some companies not. Channel 4, again, I'm not just saying that because I have to, is a particularly good one about when we start a production, we have lots of helplines or places that if you're feeling it's not working for you, you can go anonymously, and we make sure all the productions on the front of the call sheet is like, that's what you ring. Now, as a producer, you can do all that, but on the day-to-day, you're dealing with it. And I think it really comes down to the skill of the execs and who's running the company too. When I used to run shows, not comedies, we can't afford showruns, look after shows, it's down to you to get everyone together and say, this is the kind of set I want and this is the environment I want. And if anyone's got any, issues or anything comes up, I'm the person you can come to, or if you feel you can't come to me, you should ring this line, and then it'll be properly looked into. But I think that comes from the production, and some people are really good at it, and we definitely should get better at it. But I definitely can speak from my point of view and where I worked before and Channel 4 that we always sort of put it front and centre of this is the route to go if there's a problem.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, I think often when I see it work well, it's quite partial in that we think really carefully how we're going to look after or support the people who are open about their mental health challenges, the people with lived experience, and forget everybody else. And the chances are that a good proportion of any team will also be living with mental health challenges or know people who do. So I think rather than sort of being a bit paternalistic and just trying to focus on the people we know have mental health problems, to have a really kind of a strong team approach, to mental health, to well-being, to make sure it's a good working environment, a good working culture, making sure people can speak up about all sorts of issues, not just mental health, will kind of really encourage that kind of healthier dynamic, I suppose. So let's do for everybody what we're pretty good at doing for people who are perhaps open about mental health challenges, I would say.
I think that's a wonderful place to end as we round up.
Just as Dom arrives. That would have been funny.
As he comes running down.
Because, as I said at the start, there are we disproportionately working in the industry suffer from mental health issues. So we do need to make sure that our productions and the environment that we work in is as mentally healthy as possible. Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much, Kate.